Hello, good to see you again on the Peace, Knowledge, and Wisdom YouTube channel. Glad you're with us today. We have another fantastic show. As always, I just want to let you know that the purpose of our discussion is to uplift ideas, information, and viewpoints that promote peace, knowledge, and wisdom. The guests on our shows are free to state their viewpoints. However, they are not necessarily the viewpoints of myself, nor the Peace, Knowledge, and Wisdom channel. We want you to hit that share button so you can share it with all your friends and family. We also want you to hit that subscribe button. We want to make sure you're part of this family as we get this information out to our community. You want to hit the like button so that we know that you like the content that we're providing for you. And then last but not least, hit the bell. That bell is going to make you get all the notifications as soon as we upload these fantastic shows. Hit all when that drop down box comes when you hit the bell button so that you get all the shows and you're notified of them. So now buckle up. Here's a great show in store for you. Peace. Now what I want to do, first of all, is give you a chance to tell us a little bit about yourself. What I like to do is let the audience know why you're here as far as on this discussion of peace, knowledge, and wisdom. One thing is I met you probably about 5 years ago, or maybe a little bit longer.
Roughly about that.
Roughly about 5 years ago. And I do want to give a little background before you give your background of how we met and why you were able to stick in my consciousness more than the average person. Was being with the Steubenville Tigers, which most people in this local area know, which is a Pee Wee football team that me and several of my friends and my wife started. We had been doing it for about 10 years at the time, maybe 8 years. Anyway, we had played your son's team the previous year. And this next year, all of a sudden, you come. I had never met you, didn't know you. And you asked me some questions. You came down, you talked a little bit. You didn't say you wanted to bring your son. You didn't even say you really had a son at the beginning. You just asked what I was doing, what this was. And I went on explaining to you. And I believe that first time we met, you didn't even go into that. You just said, okay, and you watched. And the next day you came around is when you told me about your son. Mm-hmm. What I liked about that was I think you were testing me out. I believe you were, and I know you were, even if we've never had this discussion. I know you were, because that's kind of what I would have done. If I'm going to bring my son somewhere, which I found out how much you are into your son and you make sure you're there, you're a present father in his life. That's something that I would have did in some form or fashion before I take my son anywhere, especially if there's a chance that I may be turning. Come on in. We have a live studio audience, so no problem. Come on through and you can head that direction. Just go behind my screen there and hit that light, and you're more than welcome to go in that room. But anyway, so that was a experience that I had with you, initial experience. Didn't know where it was going to lead to, but I think it's led to a great friendship and in a respect. We've had conversations since then. Your son, you know, even if you wasn't a good man, your son was good enough to carry a load. Good athlete, great young man, and as we see, he's continued to be both of those things, and we sure that there's a great future. But my point is that stuck with me, and so then all the conversations we had since then allowed me to know that you're a thinker, that you understand things. Not that you or me or anybody is always right, but what I do know is that you're willing to listen and you do have an opinion and you're willing to voice it. I also like your strong voice, and I'm a man, and I'm gonna say what I got to say, and that's always appreciated. And we need more of that in our community. So, enough of that. That's how we met. That's one of the reasons you're here. One is also I love your background and some of the things you've told me before. So anything you'd like to share with the audience about yourself before we get started in our back and forth, the floor is yours for a couple minutes there.
Absolutely. Just to piggyback off of what you were saying, I actually, before I even met you, I DM'd Jet.
Oh, okay.
And Jet told me, I was like, my son, he's been an all-star all these years, we're just looking for something bigger. I need something to push my child.
Oh, okay.
Jet was like, he doesn't have to be an all-star. Bring him down. Let him see what's going on. If he fits, he fits. I was like, okay. Brought him down. I ran into you. We had a good conversation. I was like, if he's a leader, I want my son to be a part of this. I brought Phaeton down, and he clicked with the kids immediately. Even one of the kids who's still his friend, Ajian, came and was like, sir, can Phaeton play with us? And I was like, yeah, he can play with y'all. So, I just felt it felt like family to me
Okay.
because based on my background, I'm from Chicago, South Side.
Chi-town.
Yeah, and this place is very similar outside of the the turmoil
Right.
to where I grew up.
Okay.
So how everyone's close knit, how everyone is just like related somehow, some way. I felt at home when I came here.
Okay.
Now my wife, she's from Wellsville, and she was torn leaving, but she knew the bigger picture.
Yes.
So it just fit, and to this day, we love it here. We love the people we come in contact with. We love everything, but there's always areas of opportunity wherever you go. So just to say that, moving from Chicago, and then in my younger days, I moved from Chicago to Pennsylvania. That was a culture shock. But my grandmother, who was the matriarch of the family, she made sure that we kept our roots.
Okay.
She made sure that a man is a man. This is what you are to do as a man.
Okay.
And that's, I've carried that along with my oldest boy, my youngest boy, my daughter, and it's just I gravitate towards older men. Like you, Jet. I have a lot of older friends because I'm always trying to learn. You guys have different opinions from LeBron to anything. Just religion, anything.
Yes.
And I like to learn those things, so I'm always in contact with you guys about just little things, whatever the case may be.
Exactly.
So I'm actually happy and honored to be here to be having this conversation with you.
Good deal. Good deal. Okay, let me ask you a couple questions that I don't know. Like I said, I've been on you 5 years, but not like we're together daily. But we've come in contact. I love listening to you or seeing your comments on social media. They almost always are right on point. The only time you're ever wrong is about Jordan and LeBron. So that withstanding, I always seem to understand exactly where you're at or can say amen to what you say. So I kind of know some of how you think, but you mentioned your grandmother as a matriarch. Give us a little more information how that dynamic in your family went. As far as you mentioned your grandmother. You did not mention your father. You did not mention your mother or brother. You mentioned your grandmother.
My grandmother, because I was, growing up, I'm an 80s baby. Okay. So, my grandmother had 7 children. So obviously I was one of the first grandchildren.
Okay.
So, living on 113th, it was like people still getting married in the house.
Okay.
That's where I come from. They jump in the broom in the house.
Okay.
So, all my cousins, we were all raised together. Yeah. And it just seemed like, obviously, I gravitated towards my grandmother. I learned how to cook from her. Yeah. Math, everything. Like, she was just that person.
Now, just inquisitive, that's the person in your life as far as your hero, so to speak?
She would be probably my hero,
your
yes.
main hero, okay. Was your dad in the house?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
And your mom?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it was just your grandma you just had a strong knit family where your grandmother was there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Sounds good. I just wanted to make sure I understood that. Now, you said in Chicago. When did you leave Chicago? How old were you, rather?
We went back and forth from the time I was probably like 12 to the time I was roughly about 16.
Okay.
We were just going back and forth because my uncles, they were involved in gangs. My dad was involved in gangs, things of that nature. So things was happening to where you would have to leave for a summer.
Oh, okay.
Because the summer would get too hot and things would happen. So
too hot, not just temperature.
Right.
Okay.
So we would be moving a lot.
Okay. So in that, your dad and uncles were in gangs and things like that. Mm-hmm. You feel you have a general knowledge of that type of life?
Absolutely.
Okay. Not that it's. I want to just use that as a filter because things that happen in your life as a kid and as you grow up, they kind of affect how you think later on. Obviously,
absolutely.
But they also are part of your reflection, even if you want to change the way you are or into something different. And I say that to say, for me anyway, listening to you talk, it adds some more substance to why you may think the way you think. And sometimes people don't know why we think the way we are, what our passions are, or why we feel the way we feel. Because as I said, other than the way we met immediately, the initial point, your fatherhood, your fatherdom has always impressed me. And I have a lot of respect for it. And so we don't have a lot of that in our community. And so unfortunately, when you see it, it sticks out. So next, you said your wife is from Wellsville. How long have you been married?
We've been married for, what, 7 years?
7 years.
But I've known her since probably 20.
Oh, okay. So you know her pretty much most of your adult life.
Yeah.
You just got married. 16. Is that when you went to Pennsylvania?
Mm-hmm. Roughly 16, 17.
What area of Pennsylvania?
Man, listen, when I say it's a culture shock, that's exactly what I mean. I went from only concrete. I didn't interact with Caucasians.
Okay.
I didn't have a Caucasian teacher.
Prior to being 16 years of age.
Right.
Okay.
Never a Caucasian girlfriend.
Right.
Never interacted with them at all.
Okay.
Because of where we lived.
Right.
So we moved to a town in Pennsylvania called Ohioville.
Okay.
So when we moved, it was my grandmother and her sister, my Aunt Annie.
Okay.
She lived up the street. Now it was a big thing.
So that's why you came to Pennsylvania, because she was there.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It was a big thing because they owned their homes.
Okay.
Now this is a white neighborhood. This is like a gated community.
Okay.
They owned their homes, so it was huge.
So this is 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
Yeah. So that was a huge thing. Then my parents came, and they got their home.
Okay.
And in that, in that time, me and my sisters, I have 2 younger sisters, were the only really black people in the school.
Okay.
So you had to deal with the dynamic of we're this demographic and everybody else has never even seen us. So it was flip-flop. I went from looking at them like, what is that? And then they're looking at us the same way. I have pet peeves. They would want to, when I say they, I was, the Caucasians we would interact with, the white people we would interact with, they would want to touch your hair.
Yeah.
And now I don't have hair, but when I was younger, they wanted to touch your hair.
Yes,
that is one. If I see it now, it just makes my skin crawl. So it was a tough transition, but it was for the better.
Okay. And when you say for the better, because I assume, and I'm taking privilege to say something I say, I'm assume that you took it in as knowledge. You took it in as experience that you can grow from, and I had the same experience as similar rather. We would go down to visit my grandmother, which you know where Mingo is, directly south. Well, when I was younger, there was probably only 4 or 5 families in Mingo, period. One was my mom's family, one happened to be my wife's family, and there may have been 3 or 4 other families at the most. And so when I would go to visit my grandmother, you would have to walk about a mile to get to the next black person's house, and that was my wife's. So I knew my wife since I was very young. But anyway, around there, we played with all the kids there, and there would be problems sometimes. There would be a racial situation. But one of the things I remember, there was a girl, and I was probably 8. She would have been, if I was 8 or 9, 10, she would have been 4, 5, or 6. Very young. Her sister was older, and she'd play with my sisters. But I'll never forget the one day we were there, and they were all sitting there, and she walked up from her house, and she went behind my sister and started touching her hair and says, I like to feel your hair. That's how she said it. She talked kind of funny. I like to feel your hair. And my sister about jumped and, looked, and I said, and, it was almost like I was saying to her, oh, she wasn't mean nothing by it, or, let's not have this be an issue type of, in my mind, I'm thinking, let's not have this. Now that you say it, like you said, you have an issue with it. But because the girl was so young, she's 4 years old. And, what is wrong with you, her feeling our hair? What I like to say is, when the Black Power movement came, when Malcolm X and people would say, hey, we're black, we're beautiful, that's a sign of that's really true. Meaning someone of another race really wants to feel your hair because it is beautiful. It's nice to feel. Because she only knew the hair she knew. Wasn't nothing to that, wasn't nothing about that, but this was something, and that's how culture should be. Culture should be, anybody's culture should be looked at as something I would like to learn and I'm impressed with, because it's something different.
Absolutely.
Instead of what we had to go through, as I say, the black experience in America, we had to go through slavery, where immediately our culture was taken from us. We were then given a culture, which was a culture of chattel slavery, which was a culture of servitude, which was a culture of rape, which was a culture of disrespect, which was a culture that was demeaning. That's what we were fed and gave. And so therefore that culture grew up to be a culture that, as we see now in many respects, has been considered lower. So that was interesting. But anyway, so we found out a little bit about you. We know you got, how many kids you have?
3.
You have 3 kids. You have a wife. You live here in Steubenville now. So last, I'll finish up with this question, because what I do like, and some of our local audience, for you to say again, you said you love it here in Steubenville.
I do.
Okay. And you said when you came here, you felt home and you enjoyed that.
Absolutely.
It's always good for me to hear somebody say that about Steubenville, because most people in Steubenville say the opposite thing when they go outside of Steubenville. And I know you know what I mean by that. It's no different than I told you. I was just in Chicago, and I was in an area that didn't look so nice, but it was fine. Nobody bothered me. And you probably thought to yourself, stay there long enough, you get bothered. And that's the same way I feel about here. Stay here long enough. Yeah. They ain't going to be the same, Now, I say that somewhat yet meaning it, and somewhat in jest. Because I'm still here, and I am more than capable of not being here. Matter of fact, I lived in DC for 10 years. I didn't have to come back. I came back for the things that you noticed, that you enjoyed. And so amongst everything else, obviously, I love where I live. I love I love my history of here, my family, and everything else. But I do like hearing that when somebody comes to Steubenville and say they enjoy it. It is good to hear, and it's a good thing, because then you stay.
Right, we stayed. I enjoy it, and just like you said, there's a lot of misconceptions. People will be like, Steubenville, no. And I've lived in different places, right, and seen different things. I'm like, what do you mean?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't understand.
Yeah, it's a great place to be. I wanted to raise my kids here. That's why I came back from DC. Basically, the reason we came, we wanted to raise our kids here. We like the education here. Also, at the time I was in DC, when my son was about 4 years old, that was when Washington DC was the murder capital of the world. Basically, what Chicago has been going through in the last 5-10 years. DC was going through that in the mid 80s to middle 90s. That was what was going on there, as you probably know, if you know what the news was back then. So okay, let's get into a couple discussions. Being that this is the same week of Martin Luther King's birthday, we're in January, and we're leading up to the Black History Month. I wanna talk about the Black experience in America. And I want to park in the area. Couple things I want to park on. Give me what is your thoughts on Martin Luther King, since it's his birthday, and what does that mean, whether it be your childhood, now, presently, in the future? Give us something to say about, what do you say about Martin Luther King? What do you tell your kids about him, or anything like that?
Well, and it's ironic, because me and my son had this conversation about Martin Luther King, and I discussed with him, because I give my son books to read, books that I've already had that have been given to me. Okay. And one of the books I gave him to read, or it's the 3rd book, and it was Marcus Garvey's letters, and he reads it. And just to preface everything with, my children are biracial. My wife is white, and a lot of people a lot of people are like, well, how can you love your people so much, but you've mixed? And I'm thinking in my mind, like, I mean, that's a very good question. But if you educate, and what I do, and she can probably tell you a lot more than most people can tell you, because we have these conversations of different circumstances, what I go through. And sometimes, just to be honest, I've had moments to where I'm thinking, like, would my life be different if I had a Black wife? Right. Because she can understand of the plight that I go through getting up and going to work every day.
And more important to that, I guess I can ask, but I assume she cares enough to want to know the plight. Right. Which is key.
Very key.
And anybody that wants to know, like I said, another culture is something that everybody would want to be a part of. Right. And the only reason why it's an issue is because of the plight of the Black experience in America. Absolutely. To make it seem like it should be anything other than, oh yeah, she's from another culture, but that's the one I love. That's the one I chose from another culture. We have this thing understood where some Blacks would say, no, I don't want to be a part of anybody, any white. I want to stick to my own. We have some people who could care less. We have some people who don't even think about it. And so in all that is still the black experience and the black community, whether it's in biracial marriage, whether it's in same race marriages, we still have to deal with what we have to deal
Absolutely.
with. So go and continue that about Martin Luther King. And
So Peyton was asking me about Marcus Garvey and what was the difference between him and Martin Luther King. And I explained Marcus Garvey believed in empowerment with separation. Like, we don't need to be in their culture.
Right.
We should go back home. Martin Luther King, he understood of the situation that we were in, the situations that we were facing. You know, it was segregation, things of that nature, just the heinous crimes that were being committed against African Americans.
Right.
The difference that I told him is he wanted peace. And I explained to him, you can be a peacemaker.
Right.
And the difference between Marcus Garvey's, Malcolm X, and Martin Luther King is one wanted peace. Malcolm X, he was like, well, we could do however you want to do it.
We can roll any way you want to roll.
And I gave him, I said, the end result is death.
Exactly.
So, however you look at it, you can be peaceful, but ultimately you're going to die.
Exactly.
You could be violent, but ultimately you're going to die. So you have to know one's truth on what it is you want to do to get to your end game.
Okay.
If you feel as though that you fulfilled what you've been put on this earth to do, your purpose, and you die, however it is, violently, peacefully, then that's what it is. That's what you choose.
So his question to you about this, you gave him Marcus Garvey. Why?
That was the book that he had read previously. And then
True.
And then
but you read it.
Right. And then
What
I gave
made
it to
you
him
want him to why did you want him reading? Just because you read it? Or there's things you wanted him to say?
I wanted him to understand, because when they're biracial, obviously there's identity crisis at times.
Okay.
I've never had that identity crisis on that level, but there's an identity crisis, especially with what's going on, the climate of today's society.
Yes.
So I wanted him to see, ultimately, these are the options.
Right.
And this is what I've read, this is what I've gone through to lead to this point.
Right.
And I wanted him to understand that there are strong black men outside of your father.
Exactly.
That have different views.
Right.
But I want you to be able to, it's like free will. I want you to be able to choose which view that you want to go in. Maybe you want to do violence.
Right.
He's not that type of child, but maybe you do.
Yeah.
Maybe you do want to segregate from white community.
Right.
And I gave it to him really because he has, in this community, there's a big demographic of Catholics and Greeks and Italians.
Right.
He has friends that live in the South End projects or whatever, and
Right.
he has friends that live on Breitbart. So,
which is part of the plus, really, as far as an experiences that you have. As he goes, he will have great experiences because he's been, with both, lived with both, seen both, not mentioned just in his household, obviously. Right. But he's had a chance to live around and be a part of and see the good and the bad in both.
And I think the biggest piece of we need to educate, and that's why I do it with my child. My daughter's more, she does it on her own. Like, she's a bookworm on her own. I really don't have to push her as much. Right. For him, I have to guide. He's more of a, people learn differently. I have to be like, well, this is why you should look at this. Right. And he'll do it.
Right.
But I think it's very paramount in the development of him, seeing as though he is a young black man,
right,
to understand other things.
Right.
Because there's going to come a time to where you're going to have to be like, oh, okay, well, I understand this because I've identified already.
Yeah.
I understand that these people here do and say these things because I've identified it already.
Yeah.
I don't want them to be blindsided by anything.
Yes, I can understand that. And that's good because the reason I had asked, I wanted you to go on about your kids and then you made the statement about being in a interracial marriage. Now that it is let me just go this route because you mentioned about Marcus Garvey, because I would like to go into this. We talked about a couple things before we started, but this was one of the other things I wanted to talk to you about, and I want to get your I talked to you about the differences that we have seen have had in the black community in our history, coming out of slavery into Reconstruction and the Jim Crow, into the Civil Rights Movement, on and on. We've had those leaders, those William E.B. Du Bois, W.B. Du Bois, the Booker T. Washingtons, and that so-called struggle. Should we be out doing the things of carpentry and farming and work with our hands? And if we do that on our own, we'll be able to get to immerse ourselves into society and have our own. As opposed to W.B. Du Bois and the Talented Tenth that says, hey man, we need to have access to government to represent ourselves. We need to have access to schools. We need to be able to become lawyers and doctors, and there's our right, and we should fight for that. And that's the route we should go. So that Talented Tenth against what did they call it? Industrial type, vocational type ways to get the black man and let him pick himself up from his bootstraps. You go on to Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, nonviolent, by any means necessary. The rhetoric that talks about, hey, the white devil, the white man, it's him, and we got to separate, and we shouldn't be a part of him, to, hey, we need to be together because we're all human. You need to give me my dignity like you have my dignity. That fight, and like you said before, that there's different ways to do this. This is my question to you. In that vein, understanding that, because it's coming up, and I'll get into this a little later. It just continues to happen. Are we not that smart to not have it continue to happen again? Yes, people are different. You can go in more because you brought in the Willie Lynch letter. The point about that though is we've all read the letter. We're going to fall into the trap continuously? Nobody can come to the table and, hey, we're following the Willie Lynch ladder. Let's back off. Let's change direction. No, Malcolm, don't call Martin a Tom, an Uncle Tom preacher, because he's sitting down with people, officials and presidents and governors to try to get this solved. No, Martin, don't say that, Malcolm is wrong, or that his way is gonna send us to hell because we can't fight the white man because we don't have guns. Well, we need some fighters too, because we might have to pull some guns at some point. We might have to do this. He's calling a spade a spade. He's saying the truth. Allow him to speak the truth. What do you think about that? Basically, that spiel I just gave about the two opposites that. And the reason I say that because it separates our community. That's why we never get to the point of having quote unquote unity.
Well, human nature is to always want to be a part of something.
Okay.
So that being said, if you make it appeal to the masses, people will join what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Some people want to join the violent. We don't want to be a part of them. Mm-hmm. Let's kill them all. Some people want to be like, well, we can't get to heaven if we're doing that way.
Okay.
Some people want to do it that way.
Yes, that's correct.
But the common denominator of that is we have one goal. We all want peace. We all want that. It's just, what vehicle are you going to use to reach that point? Mm-hmm. So how I feel about it, we understand, or most people I would think mm-hmm. have or should have read the Willie Lynch letter. In your question, are we going to fall for it again?
Yeah.
Well, people are comfortable now. A lot of times, think about it. When you're comfortable,
yeah,
the one thing that you don't want to happen is things creeping in. Change.
To be uncomfortable anymore.
Change. And when you're comfortable, somebody comes knocking at your door, you're under your Afghan, you don't want to get up.
Yeah.
So it's easier for you to stay wrapped up in your Afghan than change. Most people do not want to change, so they will accept and be like, well, it ain't that bad. They will accept what they're giving us.
So let me ask you this. Does that mean there's no hope?
No.
Meaning, I say that to say, you're right, there's a lot of people comfortable. Mm-hmm. Therefore, they don't want to ruffle no feathers.
Don't rock the boat.
But it's going to take ruffling of some feathers for change. It's going to take some agitation in the wash to make the machine work, clean the clothes. And and that makes sense what you said. I mean, and I've said that before. I believe that's why we can't do that. We can't replicate. We haven't been able to replicate what Dr. King was able to accomplish in his short period of time. And in all the time it's been since he's been gone, we've never been able to duplicate as much progress as we had during the time that he was there. So to use a word of progress, because some people may say we ain't really progressed, but
so think about what he had dealing with marching on Selma and doing those things. Mm-hmm. What everybody as a collective unit had. Everybody was in the same struggle. There was no one outside of the struggle. Now they've used capitalism to put their thumb on you. So now you got Oprah Winfrey's, you got Jay-Z's, you got Russell Simmons, and that's just to name a few. Yeah. Do you really think I'm a billionaire and I'm going to reach down to help people? I may help a little bit, but I'm not going to do anything to mess up this capitalistic life that I'm living, because money, they have made money God. Yeah. So now, am I going to risk my freedom? Am I going to risk my livelihood, my children's livelihood, to help a cause that may not work out? Right. We don't have those same type of leaders then. He was willing to walk with the people because there was no class. There was no, we're rich and you're poor. No, we're all in this together. Now we don't have that because you're thinking, well, I got a good job. I'm comfortable. I'm not about to get out here and march. My boss may see me on TV.
The second part of our conversation is going to be, if you take my invitation to come back again and have another portion of this, I'm going to give you some homework, so to speak, for our next, because I want you to listen to some people. I'm going to give you some names, and I want you to listen to what they have to say, and then we're going to revisit this conversation again. Mm-hmm. But we can continue it here, because I'll give you a little, have you seen, I do a lot of YouTube, obviously, and I watch a lot of the thinkers and the pundits, whether it's political and then some of the black empowerment, whatever you would have to do, whether it's economics, whether it's education. And there's several guys I think I talked to you about before. One is Killer Mike. Mm-hmm. Another one is the new movement is Antonio Moore and Yvette Carnell, the ADOS movement. And recently, from watching them, I heard of this gentleman, Claude Anderson. Mm-hmm. You heard of Claude Anderson?
Yes. He used to have a newsletter many years ago.
Is that right?
Yeah, he had a newsletter. It was like an underground newsletter. And my sister, she went to, I believe it was Clark.
Well, let me explain this to you, what happened. I got onto Antonio Moore just by clicking on to YouTube, and he was talking about reparations. Mm-hmm. Obviously, now, and this is coming from my version of what has happened in the last year from what I've seen. Obviously, I don't know all the facts, but basically what happened is ADOS came on the scene. It's hashtag ADOS, African Descendants of Slaves. Antonio Moore, a lawyer out in the LA area, I believe that's where he's from, and Yvette Carnell, who's a professor. I don't know exactly where. I should look that up, but from what they're telling us, basically from my layman's point of view, listening to them, what I have ascertained, they also work with a gentleman by the name of Mr. Darity, Professor Darity.
I've heard of that name.
Okay, he's very knowledgeable. He has an expertise in the economics and the numbers of what has happened to the black community and as it relates to slavery, and if we were to get reparations, how we should get it, or first of all, what's owed. They've done the research, as Antonio would more say, they got the data, and they seem to be well versed in this data, and they've done a lot of work on this, and it's something that definitely needed to be done. So they come on the scene with this, and they're trying to get a following to let people know, hey, we should get reparations. This is what we're owed. We need to, and so their thought is to change this ADOS, African Descendants of Slave, under the topic and the want of reparations. In order to get it done, we have to turn this political. Meaning, we have to be able to get this into politics, into politicians. We have to get laws changed. Small group. So how they came on the scene from me watching them and where I'm going with this is, I don't know if you ever watch MSNBC. Mm-hmm. You ever heard of A.M. Joy?
Yeah.
Okay, the black lady on there. She had another black woman on there. Now, this is in the midst of all the stuff that was during this time, say 2-3 years ago, when the stuff was going on about whether or not Russia influenced the election. Mm. And when it came out with Facebook and all that, it showed some of the ways they were doing it. They were using these bots on the computer. And if you were someone that hated Trump or liked Trump or whatever, they would manipulate so you could see only certain things. Or they would put hashtag I hate Trump all over an area, and if you join it, you think you're joining this group when it's only a computer generating this. Okay. Again, I'm not technical enough to know how that worked, but that's what was going on. So the term bot is what I wanted to try to articulate. So this woman, this other black lady, came on to AM Joy and started talking about different things about how this is being done. And however she mentioned it, she said that just like this new one coming up, it's hashtag ADOS. That's a Russian bot. That's the Russian trying to manipulate. And the reason she said it's the Russians, and we're on MSNBC, is because ADOS had said some things about Kamala Harris. And they were saying she shouldn't get the nomination because of her being a prosecutor and she has not done anything for blacks or what have you. And I'm just paraphrasing some of the things that could have been said. I don't know the exact verbiage that Antonio or Yvette used against her, but they was questioning whether or not she should be something that all blacks should go to. So when she said this, it makes it look like their uprising, their group, their following is not true. You can't join that because it's just a Russian bot. So it'd be like me if you were on there, or even this show, and they say, "Oh, that peace, knowledge, and wisdom isn't a true person," and the people that's following, it's not really people; those are bots. Okay, so that discredits their group. So rightfully, they're up in arms. Now, what happens? They come on, they have a show, on YouTube. I watch the next one, and it's basically they're killing AM Joy for having whoever this is on and for her spreading that. What her purpose for allowing that to happen without knowing that that woman is lying, they're saying as a journalist that she should have researched. And like he's saying, it wouldn't be easy to see us on YouTube and see me as a real person and call and want to interview me to combat what she's saying. But when you come at somebody, like if that was you that put it, I said, "Oh man, that Stephon don't know what he's talking about." See, the reason he don't know what he's talking about is because his wife is white, so he really don't care about black. Now, you coming back, so now we can't talk at all. Okay, that's where I'm going with this, and that has done in different ways. You ever heard of Angela Rye? Mm-hmm. She's a cocking head for CNN, black girl, knows her stuff. She has a history in the civil rights movement with Jesse and those guys. She was under their tutelage coming up, learning her stuff. She knows her facts and things like that. She's a political person. Somehow she's made some references to reparations. I believe this is how it started. And she was saying, well, we don't necessarily need reparations to some extent. Now, I'm not only paraphrasing what I think she said. It caused them to clap back at her. Now, not to be too long, but where this gets dicey is that they are clapping back at these people, and part of the things they're saying is, for instance, Barack Obama made the statement that we shouldn't get reparations, we should just get policies. ADOS's retort to him is saying, why would he want reparations? Why would he have a passion for reparation when he's not ADOS? ADOS stands for African Descendants of Slaves, obviously. He's not an African descendant of slaves. See, his dad was Kenyan. His mom was white. He's never been a slave, and his people was never a slave in America. So of course he don't want it. Why? So what they're saying is, why are you speaking about reparations?
He doesn't have an interest.
And they're saying they need to be the one speak on this because they got the data, they've done the history, and somebody who is ADOS should be the one speaking for this. And so when Angela Rye said it, there was a question about her ethnicity, and I think she has some type of either Cuban or it's some other type of nationality, I think on her father's side or something. Now, I think it came out when it was researched that she does have some ADOS. It could be, her mother could be half, and it could be, her dad could be African American, and his dad and his dad's dad, and his dad's dad was a slave.
Okay.
So that's the thing. But the point of where I'm bringing this to is now, I started listening to ADOS. I really like the things they're saying. I like Angela Rye. Whenever she says it, she's talking for black people, and she says what she needs to be saying. AM Joy's on MNBC. There's not that many black journalists on her. She has her own show. Normally, she's she's at least progressive. She's at least liberal, and that's what I am. And so why do we have to be fighting, Now, Lately, what has happened, they start mentioning Claude Anderson had made a statement that the people doing reparations now don't know what they're talking about, and anything that they did get, they got from me because I've been doing this since 1980, whatever. Now, he's right that he's been doing it since then. I don't know if he's right that they got the information from him. They're saying, no, we got this from the data we did. Now, it's not to mention that anytime, like even me, I'm down with ADOS right now, and most of my, I don't know a lot of information. I believe what Antonio Moore and them guys are saying, and they say the data. I believe that data. They say where they got it from. I just believe that's the true data. But if I decided to do something and somebody said, Mac don't know what he's talking about, well, I know enough to know that they knew what they were talking about. No, I didn't do the research. So that's not a big deal. But what has happened is, I guess, like you said, you know of Mr. Dr. Claude Anderson. So when they clapped at Mr. Claude Anderson, other people who followed him clapped back at them. The problem is they all want the same thing. They want reparations. Why are we going against each other? So to that little bit of cryptic type analysis of what I'm saying, you say what? Where would you, how could you, if you was able to get them guys in a room?
It's just like...
Would you browbeat them and tell them?
No, it's just like you were saying, or we were saying earlier, crabs in a barrel. But why do you even think crabs shouldn't even be in a barrel?
Yeah.
So we want the same thing. We're trying to get out. So if we want the same thing, we're just using different vehicles in which to get to that same point.
Right.
Why wouldn't we have a conversation and say, and it's about respect. It's about having an actual dialogue. The shortest distance between two people is communication.
And I'm gonna bring this in, and I hate to bring it in, but I'm almost positive that it's what it is. I just hate to bring it in because it kind of, we should always be positive because that's what we need to do. But sometimes you have to call like you see it because maybe people will wake up. But no different than when it was Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. A lot of it is jealousy. A lot of it is, and I understand because I wanted to so bad to try to communicate with them guys, but you know, I'm just me. But I want to communicate with them like, why you got to come so hard down on a sister or a brother? Just because they said this. Yeah, they was downing you a little bit, but they don't really know you personally. Contact them and say, hey, let me school you a little bit here. This is actually where we're coming from. And then if you've schooled them and they do understand and they know you're real, like for instance, AM Joy, or because see, that's a big deal because what they're saying with ADOS is everything they say about the reparations stuff and what they're doing is fact. And what they're saying is there's about 38 million black people in America, but only 22 million of them are ADOS. So if we do get reparations, which most people think we ain't gonna get anyway, but if we do get them and it's 15 trillion, which is around, I believe, I don't know for sure, I can't remember the actual number, but I believe 15 trillion is what they're trying to say is what we should be getting. Whereas, for instance, Marianne Williamson said 500 billion or something. And, you know, they're saying she's way off. But at least she's even willing to have the conversation to say, because she said something that nobody else has said that was the best. She says, well, first of all, it wouldn't be me that would decide it. Black people should decide how much they're owed and how it should be gotten. So she's willing to do that as president to say, hey, this is going to be the committee and it's going to be people who know something about this that's going to decide. But anyway, what he's saying is that let's just say if there's 38 million blacks in America, the average person might say, okay, you got to split, let's just say 38 trillion, 38 ways. That means 38 million people would get however much, 100,000 or a million, or I don't know the math. I mean, whereas he's saying no, 22 million should split that 38 trillion, which makes a big difference.
Huge difference.
Yeah, and it's right. And so I don't know if, no, it wasn't me and you, it was me and Roy. You ever heard of Dr. Umar Johnson?
Yeah.
I'm sure you have.
Mm-hmm.
He made this statement to piggyback on what we're talking about. When he was asked about the ADOS movement, he says, I respect what they're doing, I just can't support him. Now, you know him. Would you think that you know of him, or at least seen him? Can you think of a reason why he wouldn't support that?
Well, knowing him and following him as long as I have, I would think that he would possibly say he's not going to support it because maybe they didn't support him.
Okay, no. This is what he said. I can't support him because I'm a Pan-Africanist. And he says, in his tenet, or their tenet, basically one of the things it says is, I can't support one group of Africans unless all Africans are a part of it.
And that makes sense.
Okay, it makes sense, except it doesn't make sense because of the same reason that you said that only 22 million should get the reparations.
You got to understand what the other 16 million are.
They're Haitians, they're Jamaican, they're Kenyans, they're Nigerians.
So are they all
Chinese,
Africans?
Yes.
In a sense.
No, they are. They're just not African descendants of slaves.
Well, I mean...
And we want reparations from who?
We want it for that.
But who do we want it from?
The government. Our government.
America. So my point is, all our brothers and sisters, Africans, they went through slavery too. But they had different colonizers. They got their money from the French. In other words, Jamaica might have been, their colonizer may have been the French or the British. I don't know for sure.
Well, like Haitians.
Okay,
I get what I get.
So my only point is it's not, I mean, I shouldn't be the bad guy. Like, I got to give all my money to you when you didn't grow up in Ohio and they was treating us all bad. And now they finally decide after years and years and years to give Ohio blacks the money that they own. Now you come from Chicago all big and bad and think you need some of my money? Like, what's that got to do? We still brothers, but this ain't your money. Now, I don't know what they did in Chicago. Now, because I'm sure if they gave you your money in Illinois, you wouldn't be wanting everybody from black that's in Ohio to come to Illinois to get some of that money, would you? It wouldn't be our money.
It wouldn't be your money.
That's not even hard to figure out. And my point is, so again, what I'm saying is that it's an easy fix. Just understand what we're talking about. There's no use to get upset unless you say if you might say, no, I think I should get some of it too. And you have no reason for saying other than, I guess you'd be like Suge Knight and just say, yeah, I'm taking it. Like, so what I'm saying is that it's a shame that we can't. And so my point is somebody who is so strong in what he says and is so smart and articulate in knowledge that he has, and I'm talking about Dr. Umar Johnson, to say something like that is so disheartening. Now, I listen to him for what I listen to him for because what he knows, he knows. Some of his opinions I don't agree with, but what he knows, he knows. I don't agree with ADOS the way they attack people who don't agree directly with them immediately. And then they kind of, because I think talking about somebody's heritage is going almost like talking about my mom. And I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah,
you can have that conversation privately. Hey, Angela, the reason why we don't want you speaking on reparations is because the reparations that America would give, you are not you, Barack Obama, Kamala Harris, you guys aren't ADOS. Reparations is not nothing got to do with you. If you want to support us in getting them, by all means you should, because your family had colonizers too, and they should give you reparations. But right now, this story and who you representing and the media you're on is American media, So I wanted to put that into you a little bit because I want you to read next time. I'm gonna give you I'll send you some of the different discussions on that and let you listen to it. And when we come back again and do our next part, we'll go over that. Because we are running into time, obviously, and I've talked a little too much instead of letting you talk. But we do that whenever we get together.
That's good information, though.
Yeah, and so I'm going to end on this one. So we will talk again the next time we'll pick up with reparations. Mm-hmm. But what I next time also want to get into, because I know it's dear to your heart and a lot of our hearts, the black athlete. Big history here of athletes in this area, just like everywhere. But here, we take our football seriously. We take our sports seriously. Yeah, we take our stuff seriously.
That's an understatement.
But the in Steubenville, Big Red, if I might say, we have the same problem. Also, there's some reparations. There should be some reparations. And me myself personally. I would be willing to have my preparations come in the future, meaning I don't want anything for it. And when I say me, I wouldn't be necessarily, it would be me too, because I played sports and I gave my blood, sweat, and tears. I've supported my son who gave his blood, sweat, and tears to that program, our program. But we ain't always receive out of it what we could have received, what others have received out of it. But what I would like to see is in the future, I would like to say, acknowledge that. So now in the future, do it right for those that's in there now and those that will be coming. what that form of reparations are is something I think that should be talked about, and that could be something we can pick up on. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, about maybe players being played as far as NCAA and things like that. We'll get into that.
That's a deep one there, Matt.
Well, it is. And so we'll unpack it. You know what I mean? We got to see how we feel about it. The other one that I wanted to talk to you about, and I think I lost it in the translation, but we'll get together and go over some of those things. The Byron Allen situation.
Okay.
If you're familiar with it.
Well, he was trying to buy the television television station.
Well, and he has bought them. And what he's doing is he's suing Comcast because Comcast is not giving the black-owned stations the money they're giving the other stations.
Right.
Therefore, it's harder for them to get good content because they don't have the money to do the things. We'll unpack that a little bit. I want to go over that a little bit with you. And so what I'd like to do is end by just seeing if you have any thoughts on Black History Month coming up, and what do you think should happen? Any suggestions for Black History Month? How you feel about Black History Month and how it relates to the Black community?
Well, I believe each one should teach one.
Okay. You
have knowledge. There's other brothers with knowledge. I think there's a lot of young youth.
Yeah.
Just based on, and I got to talk to Jet, and I believe it was at your party about that, and I love what he was doing. I was unable to attend. I was upset. Peyton had a training. We couldn't go. Right. I really wanted to be there. Just to be there to support, because I love what he's doing.
Yes.
Because the youth are the future.
Yes.
That being said, Black History Month, I feel as though, and that's why I'm so engaged with my son, because my dad, he was engaged, but my dad would say athletes are gym shoe creepers. I'll never be a gym shoe creeper. Like, if you see my dad right now, he probably have on some Stacey Adams. Like, he's always clean. He never was into that ever.
Right.
So playing sports was kind of like blasphemy for him.
Okay.
But my uncles did, and I was good, so that's what happened.
Yeah.
But here in Steubenville, a lot of kids have this notion of all those kids that play for the Tigers or Broncos now, all they want to do is put that S on their helmet.
Yes.
So if we can associate you thinking you made it by putting that S on your helmet, there's a lot of other ways that you can be a productive, citizen or whatever, man first in this community. Exactly. And I think if we gather the boys that are, standing by Maryland Market and all these other different places and then show them, listen, this isn't the only way.
Right.
This is only a vehicle that you use to get to where you want to go.
Yes.
And we'll talk about that next time, but they brainwash them so much and they're thinking this is all that you have. This is all that you're good for. Yes. And I can tell you, that stuff gives a lot of these young brothers, me, myself, I don't know you, it gives you almost PTSD.
Yeah.
Because you're putting yourself in a constant car accident every time you go on the field and play and practice and get yelled at and demeaned, and you may not even get in the game.
And we know that more and more now as the years go, like you said, with the CTE and stuff, that's a dangerous game out there. And to play it well, it makes it more dangerous.
That's a constant car accident.
And that's why I was telling you, even when I said that, it may sound crazy to some when I first said it. I'll be able to break it down in our next one. But we owe some reparations.
And I think, and you're absolutely correct.
And, that may be, there. Somebody might call it something different, but that's all reparations is basically a debt owed. Something you owe for what you've given. And that's always given out in different ways, and we'll go over that, whether it be in scholarships, whether it be in money to get that banquet at the end of the year. Yeah. You see certain people getting more than others.
Absolutely.
That's payment. That's payment for what you did. That's basically payment. And the jobs that you get once you graduated and the connections that you have to get where you're at now, that's all reparations. That's all payment.
And I believe that is one of the most paramount pieces of this community, because it's all one goal. We're just at different ends of the town. And
all supported. It's pretty much supported by everyone.
Everyone.
So
is it that you just want certain people to get that shine? Because your grandfather played, so he has to play?
And if that's the case, I know some other grandfathers. I had grandfathers that played, So again, we'll talk about that. We'll unpack that and a couple other things that we'll have on there. And again, It was great talking with you.
Absolutely,
Hope
man.
to do it again.
Absolutely.
We want to hope for this broadcast will touch someone and create some conversation, but always make comments at the end here, and through the week we will try to address them. I'll come on live and address some of the comments, but most of these brothers that I'm going to have on, and any of the people, women that I have on, I'm going to try to get them to come back, because this is new. I'm new at this, don't know anything about this journalism thing or this communications thing. Not like I have a degree in communications or anything, but this is just a vehicle that we can use with social media.
To get to that point.
Exactly. Ideas and things of that nature. We want to get to solutions. And so again, Stephon, Godspeed, and please come back again.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me, man. This is,
a good thing.
I like it.
A good thing.
I like
good
it.
deal. Thank you guys. Come back again on peace, knowledge, and wisdom. Peace.